Let's talk some California stuff here.
Let's talk about California, where we are seeing some interesting movement that is, I would say, in the long term, probably positive for the prospects of there being some form of legal sports betting in California. Our Mike Mazzio talked to the Sports Betting Alliance, which this group includes a number of sports books, including FanDuel and DraftKings in particular, groups who were behind the push in 2022 for two ballot measure. I was going to say two ballot measures, but one of them was pushed by the sports books and another was countered by the tribes. They were behind one that was trying to open up the sports betting market in California to commercial operators. We are all aware of what a spectacular failure that became at the ballot. Now we saw these new initiatives come from basically nowhere this year in 24. The signature gathering efforts are supposed to be beginning right now within California. And the Sports Betting Alliance has come out and said, we are not going to support these. We are aligned with the tribes in being opposed to these new sports betting initiatives. And think about just how fractured the relations were between the tribes and the commercial sports books at the end of 2022. This is at least the beginnings of a path toward reconciliation. Now, does it look like what the commercial sports books would like it to, where they are licensees in California and running sports betting the way they do across the rest of the country? I doubt it, considering what we've heard from tribal leaders over time in California. This is something where the commercial sports books probably have a much smaller role if the tribes continue to stick to what they've said. But this is a goodwill effort here by FanDuel and DraftKings. This is smart on their part to come out and align with the tribes and say, like, hey, just so it's really clear to everyone, we're not behind this. We are not the ones providing the funding. We are not trying to do this through some sort of third party. They have to do that because of how shrouded the first initiative was, where they were trying to call it about homelessness, and then it really was about sports betting, and it ultimately turned out to be a big failure in front of the voters of California. So I think it's a very smart move by the major U.S. sports books to be clear about the fact that they are not behind this and that they are at least implicitly seeking alignment with California's gaming tribes.
Adam, if as we sit here at the beginning of 2024, if we're talking about handicapping states and actual chances of this getting done by, let's say how many states will we have by 2027? And the reason I do the 2027 is because we know Texas meets again in 2025 or whatever, and that gives them another cycle to get that done. Outside of Utah, would it surprise you if California is basically like the last man standing when it all comes down to it because of all of the different interests and stuff like that? I mean, maybe they get something done internally with just the tribes, but if we're talking about like, hey, a competitive market where people can come in and really, give 30 plus million Californians a real choice and a real option, would it surprise you if California is kind of the lone holdout?
It would, only because of the fact that there is such pressure to get this done from the sportsbooks perspective in terms of their long-term viability, right? Like, there aren't that many places left to add a bunch of customers. Now, keep in mind, they're probably not going to be able to do it the way they would like to do it. Does it end up looking something like Florida, where there is Hard Rock Bet and nothing else? Do the tribes have some version of their own online sports betting that they decide to do in the long run in California? And maybe the sports books like FanDuel and DraftKings are getting in some sort of supplier way, some sort of B2B way, some sort of way that allows them to access maybe for their DFS in a way that they haven't. I don't know. I'm not really clear on what the end game is going to be, because I don't think anyone has a clear end game right now. The gaming tribes in California are perfectly happy with the status quo as it is. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry in California in terms of tribal gaming. So what can major U.S. sports books or anyone else offer to tribes that would be worth it to them when their main concern is twofold? One, that people are going to stop coming to tribal casinos and they're going to stop coming to tribal land and spending on hotels and spending on shows and meals and so on. And the second part of it is, How do you do it in a way that makes clear to tribes, or at least does not threaten them, that this is not about opening to wider online gaming, which was the real concern about this in the first place. It wasn't about sports betting in 22. Let's be clear about that. This was really about it opening up a door to iGaming and what impact that would have on tribal interests. So you mentioned Utah. I'm not really hopeful for Utah, Alaska, Idaho, a number of states that really don't move the needle in terms of total addressable market. In terms of California, if you asked me to handicap, like, by 2027, is there legal sports betting in California? Probably not. But if you asked me by 29 or 30, I think that's a possibility.
I'll deviate just a tad here from our rundown, since we are talking about states and things getting legalized and things going on. Our speculation of what was going on in Texas, as we speculated here on the podcast, Mark Cuban basically all but said here over the last couple of weeks, as he's been interviewed on selling that majority stake over to the Adelson family. And he basically said all the stuff that we said. Look, they do better on the real estate and gaming side. I am not a real estate and gaming person. I am a basketball. I want to run this basketball team, and I think that I can provide stuff on the other sides of all of this and help things out along the way. And so it was all of the speculation we had. It's not like we were the only people out there talking about it, but it's kind of came true over the last few weeks with Cuban speaking out that this was just the long game of building a new stadium, an entertainment district, and a casino right there in Dallas, and trying to make Dallas a new destination for the center of the United States, because he was saying, hey, there's New York, and hey, there's Vegas, and in between there's kind of LA and Miami or whatever, but there's no destination in the middle of the country, and he wants Dallas to be that. And he has said as much here over the last few weeks.
There are billionaires in this country, or at least those who claim to be billionaires, who have a track record that isn't all that successful, right? It won't take a whole lot of Googling to find that. Mark Cuban and the Adelson family are billionaires who have a pretty good track record of succeeding in their business interests. And so I don't think it's very hard for us to extrapolate out and see that Mark Cuban is playing the longer game here. And the Adelson family is more than happy to have a partner who is so prominent in the state of Texas, not as so rich in the state of Texas, but is so prominent in the state of Texas, to be able to help in the shared quest to be able to have some sort of legalized casino gaming in the state. So again, we're not really going to be talking about this until 2025, when there's a chance for the legislature to get behind it again. But it certainly seems like everything that we thought about why these synergies exist, and hey, it's the beginning of a new year, we have to use words like synergies, right? We're re-upping the corporate goodness here. That's what we expect to see play out in 25.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn, and this is just kind of more trying to read the tea leaves or something like that, but I don't think Cuban sells the part of the team, which is his baby and the thing that he loves most in this whole world, if this was not a very, very realistic possibility of happening. Like, I'm not going to say that he knows something we don't. I'm just saying he probably has a very good feeling about this, because again, this was a move made specifically for a reason, and not because Cuban had just decided, oh, you know what, I need more billions. Let me go sell part of this team because my multiple billions I have already, I just need more of them. That was not it. This was for a grander plan. And again, I don't think he does this, Adam, and I'm just speculating here. I don't think he does this if he doesn't feel like this is a really, really good chance of coming to fruition.
I'm going to make an analogy here that you're going to understand as someone who spent the amount of time in the state of Nevada that you have. One of the things when I worked in politics in Nevada that we continually tried to drive home to Washington, D.C. consultants, California consultants, people coming in from out of state trying to accomplish things in Nevada, and they didn't get it, and they didn't listen to us, and we watched failure after failure because of it. You need to understand that in Nevada, and I think you can say this for Texas as well, there is a wariness of outsiders that is strong. It is palpable, and it will kill off the things that you want to do. If you come in with the attitude of, we know what's best for you, then you are probably going to fail in Nevada. And we've talked about the ethnocentrism around Texas and the fact that it's a state that really values its heritage, its history, its identity. But I think beyond that, there's also this idea of no one from the outside is going to come in and do what they want to do without us doing things the way that we want to do them. And so if that was a under the table message to Mark Cuban and the Adelson family from powerful interests to say this is the best way to do it, or if it was just Mark Cuban being smart enough to read the tea leaves himself and say, I really want to get this done and I think this is the best way to go about it. They tried in 23 with forming a PAC that was giving money to legislators and trying to get it done that way. There was more movement on sports betting than we had ever seen in Texas in 23, but it didn't get done. This feels like a logical next step in that process.